So welcome everybody, my name is Paul and I have a small channel here and I talk a lot about mystical subjects and ancient history and so on. And one of my big themes is I talk a lot about the transition that we've been going through for quite some time now. Because long ago, as many people know, we had the Y2K and the 2012 hoopla and so on, and there was a lot of talk about the change and the end of the world and so on. So I talk a lot about the mystical aspect, the esoteric aspect of life, the internal, the subconscious, the superliminal, you might say. And I want to talk again today about that specifically because we're going through this big, huge transition here. And a lot of stuff on the surface you don't understand. There's everything on the surface has an underlying cause. And that's one of the problems we have in modern information because we listen to the news and all the different sources of information we have, and we're never going to get all the deep, deep aspects of any particular subject. It's just too many subjects and too vast and so on. And then there's also the fact that there are, you might say, what call spiritual aspects, or what I call the esoteric aspects of the big transition, the energy movements, the world. The planet is moving and the sun is moving and all the stuff's going on in the solar system, and we're just tiny little fleas on a camel's back, you might say, in this whole process, and there's a lot to understand. So what I'm trying to talk about is, if you look at esoteric science, it's all about energy. There's all about the oneness. And let's say you have a situation where we plant a seed and it grows and slowly and it transforms in so many different shapes. It's amazing if you ever watch a plant grow. I mean, especially if it has thorns and flowers and then buds and then seeds and everything else. It's just a huge transformation that goes on. And every part of that flower or every part of that plant is necessary to culminate in a beautiful flower and the sweet smell that flows out and everywhere. And the planet as a whole is basically an energy system. We don't think about it very much like that, but there's tremendous dynamic energy going on. We got the ocean currents, we got the winds, we got the solar heating, and vectors and convection currents and all kinds of stuff going on the planet, earthquakes and volcanoes and so on. And we're in the middle of a really dynamic system. Well, the same thing, we might say, well, there's a earthquake or there's a volcanic pool of magma under the earth or something, and it shifts around and it causes some problems on the planet. Our humanity, the human race as a whole, is one, you might say, an entity. It's a conglomeration of a whole bunch of energy, like a beehive. A beehive is just not just one bee. There's all kinds of stuff going on there. Same way with an ant colony. And it's one big unit and all stuff's going on. And humanity as a whole is kind of like moves along like a centipede with all these little legs. It's just like all these, like, slowly changes this and that and the other thing. People grow slowly but surely. The bodies of humanity has changed over the years. The intelligence capacity, the things that we do, the food that we eat, and so on. And the transition that we're going through right now has a lot of subtle and underlying currents that aren't really, they don't talk about them on the news and so on. Now, there are people who study these kinds of things. There are mystical people on both sides, there's negative and positive. And there are people who know this, who are secretly manipulating the energy of humanity, for example, convincing people to believe a certain way and doing all they call the bread and circuses, as Orwell said, the whole big entertainment business, get everybody all psyched up and motivated and get them angry or get them into a turmoil or boiling or whatever. And there are people who manipulate that, and that's going on. That's one of the things that's going on. So one thing that is talked about a lot in the news and the offbeat news, you might say, is there's all the negative things about what's going on. And that's true. There are a lot of negative energies and negative people and really nasty, manipulative people. But there's also a long, long history of humanity that goes back a very, very long time of sages, not just one. Not just one savior person. There's a whole network of all the different spiritually oriented people, wise people, educated, creative people, artists, conglomeration of soul energy that also moves humanity in a very, very positive way. And we see the Renaissance happened, and there's big, fantastic inventions that have been found in China and in many parts of the world. The kind of craftsmanship they've had and the architecture they did is just absolutely amazing. So human beings are amazing, but there are people who want to control human beings, and there's a small number of them, and we can get into some of the esoteric aspects of that, because some of them, they may have influence from off planet or other aspects of our creation that are very powerful but not very visible to us. And that's one thing we have to understand, what's going on, that there's a lot going on that we're just not conscious of until we take our attention away from the media and away from some of those things that distract us and get into the root. If you look back not very far away, a few hundred years, there were building some amazing structures even long time ago. There's been sages and saints and incredible artwork all over the world, and crafts and silk and marble structures and all kinds of amazing. Back when the day when people didn't watch TV, they used to make stuff. They used to fix things, so they used to build things. They didn't have the bread and circuses, you might say. They didn't have a movie to go to or the big game that they got to watch. Or people did stuff, They built amazing structures. Some of them are still lasting for thousands and thousands of years. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. So there's an esoteric aspects about the development of humanity. Now we have incredible bodies. The human race has the opportunity right now to have incredible health and everything, and if we just all cooperate, have beautiful human bodies and get them all fixed up and healthy and have cleanliness and so on, and have time to invent things. But individually, we have to capture our own attention. We can't base an excuse on, well, there's all these manipulators out there. We have to take our attention away from the things that distract us as individuals and get into some deeper understanding of the transition that we're going through. Because nature has transition, just like that seed. It's just a definite thing's going to happen. When the seed goes up and then it builds to a certain point and the bud comes up and the flower is definitely going to be a certain kind of shape, and it's going to definitely have a certain kind of smell. It's definitely going to be a certain kind of color, because all of that was programmed into the DNA and the magic of creation and the life and the prana energy and the sunlight and all nature brings it out into manifestation. Human race is just like that. The human race is like, you might say, a crop. That term goes a lot deeper than you might imagine. But there's a vast amount of creative energy going on the planet right now, and it has tremendous amount of potential. And there is a divine. I don't care what people say. You don't have to use the word God. You don't have to have a concept of a God. But there's something tremendously awesome and magical, incredible, that sustains this universe. And all the sages have said that our body is being sustained by something. Our consciousness has its roots in that quantum field of energy, and that's how everything works. Now, as our solar system goes through certain parts of the galaxy, you might say, there's things that happen to the solar system over the time, and people have reported it. That's why they watch the stars. People watch the stars incredibly carefully for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and we still use the calendars that were used for a long time, because they watch there's different energy and different things going on in our solar system, and over a long period of time it gets documented. And one of the things that happens, to talk about crises and so on, there have been solar flashes that have happened multiple times. There have been flooding that's happened. There's incredible Earth rotation shifts and Earth crustal shifts and amazing stuff going on in our solar system that we just do not think about. So what I'm just saying is that there's an esoteric and underlying aspect of the change that we're going through right now that we need to look into. And what's our role in it? Our role is to help people understand, to help communicate, to transform ourselves, and to get the maximum use of this human body. And there are sages and saints and all kinds of different little helpers and beings of all kinds that are involved in the process. And the sages of the age, people have different kinds of perception. There's many different kinds of perception that human beings can have with the pineal gland and the increased sensitivity to their physical senses and deep intuitional understandings and samadhi and revelations and so on that people have. And we need to maximize our use of that and realize that sometimes we're being spoken to, we're being shown things, there's a secret or a mystery in every second, you might say. There's a beauty possible unfolding in every minute. And if we cooperate with that, it'll be a whole lot nicer, you see, because when the river moves, it's going to move everything. If you look at a big river and when it gets flooded, it just pushes everything. It doesn't matter what it is, it's pushing it down the river and it's changing the banks. The force of nature that's changing humanity is related. It all comes back to energy. Everything is energy. The energy of the planet, the energy of the solar system, the energy of nature, the energy of the masses of human beings, the breathing, the physical activity that we do. That conglomeration of all that is just vast. And if we participate in it, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be consciously participating in our existence and helping that flow, because it's just like when the sunshine comes. I mean, in the springtime, man, everything starts to grow. We can't stop it. I mean, all the weeds come out, all the stuff that you don't want to grow and all the stuff that you do want to grow, it's just going to start growing. And that's the same way that's happening on this planet. The solar system is going through something. The sun is changing its vibration and radiation frequencies and is pulsing and so on. And all that affects the whole universe. And it's just irresistible. We must change. We will change. And whether you cooperate with it or not, you might be one of those logs that gets shifted down the river by the big river. So that's a little bit about the esoteric aspect of this whole transition. And what I try to do is, I'm a reporter. I'm mainly a dot connector. I put videos out there and say, look over this way, look over that way, because I do a lot of research that maybe other people don't do, and they don't have time to do it. But I listen whenever I can, in my car, washing dishes, taking a bath. Okay, listen, and learn about ancient mysteries and the way things are, and the things that are going on this planet that you just never will hear out in the news. You might hear a little tidbit about something, but you'll never get in depth, so you have to go look for that information yourself. And I'm trying to convey a summary of what's going on out there, because the summary says, okay, well, this vector and that vector and this vector and that vector and all these different things are pushing on this thing, and this is the trend that we're going in, and we're definitely going in the trend of radical transformation. It's so obvious right now. I've been talking about it for 20 years at least overall, and I make videos because I think it's very, very important that we consider our role in it and to help each other wake up, because the irresistible force of the solar system changed and humanity's changed, and then there's the things that the politicians do and all those the nasties, the usual suspects, the things that they're doing, and we have to be conscious of that so that we can adapt and function and survive and thrive through this process. And there's a lot of people out there who need guidance and need a little bit of help understanding what's going on, because frankly, we're not being told some really, really important things. Our history that we're taught is not the same. There's a whole lot missing from our history. There's a whole lot missing from our science. There's secret patents. There's things we're not allowed to know. There's so many things that we're not getting, and I am trying to tell people, look, connect the dots and go out and do some research on your own. So how do we adapt? Okay, if you're in a storm, for example, you can put up an umbrella. There's things that we can do, meditation, we can shelter ourselves, and say we can protect ourselves by having good, clean bodies and doing healthy activity and associating with nice people and radiating light and kindness out there. And that's a little thing that we can do, and we can help by educating ourselves about a little bit about our history, because a lot of people don't know what's happening around the world. It's easy to just forget that the United States here is one big country, and you can hear a little bit about stuff on the news and see videos and stuff, but if you don't understand really the vastness of this planet and the different cultures and the billions of different kinds of people, and they're all motivated differently, that the least we can do is participate in a very conscious way and help prepare people who are not so conscious, and help them understand that, look, it's going through a big change and we just have to adapt to it, but it's not impossible because we have a lot of potential, we have a lot of capacities within us. Now, as far as immediately what's going to happen is, I can foresee that for sure the food situation is going to get really bad. Now, where I happen to live in western part of Virginia is very mellow out here, and there's lots of wildlife, and there's free food out in the woods, and there's water, plenty of water running down the streams, and cows and cattle and orchards and all that's good stuff out here. But if you're living in a city, I would really strongly suggest that you have some kind of a concept of where you might go in case there was a hurricane or a storm or a really large-scale power outage or something like that. Because things can get pretty hairy in a big city. Like in New York City some years ago, there was a blackout for like four days or something. Wow, that made a huge effect. And oh man, that was a big deal for 4 days out in the countryside. 4 days, whatever, it'll be past over a few days. We'll be out of here. No problemo. See, it's a very different thing of where you live and how you live. You see, and there are different kinds of vehicles that you can get now that allow you to go on gravel roads. I mean, there's a lot of really gravel roads in Virginia, for example, and there's a lot of cars. You don't want to be taking your Maserati or your Audi down some of these back roads in Virginia. You can't even take a Jeep on some of them. So I'm basically getting at being prepared. Being prepared is a really good thing. I'm an aviation student and a small plane pilot. They do a lot of counseling to you when you take an aviation course about good decision making and being conscious, and they have the phrase all available information. Before you make your plan to fly somewhere, get all available information. You want the weather, the wind, the altitudes, what you're going to be doing, what your alternative is, what your radio frequencies are, what your navigation beacons are. So in our daily life, we have to have a similar approach to our life to get very conscious, so that we have basically a trajectory that we're heading on that is self-reliant. I'm a big fan of homesteaders. I'm a realtor. I'm a fan of homesteading and off-the-grid living, or any kind of self-sustaining thing that you can do, because literally for thousands and thousands of years on this planet, the people who survived were the people who lived in the forest and the mountains. All the big civilizations came and went, and some of the remains were just the people who happened to be living in the forest. There's places in the country, in the world right now, that if the nuclear war happened and destroyed 20 of the biggest cities on the planet, they might not even know about it. And if they did, they would just go on about their life, because they live simply. There's something to be said for that old saying about how blessed are the meek, for they'll inherit the earth. Because maybe, in a big storm, the big trees go down first, and the grass and all the little stuff, usually comes out fine. So I urge people to consider the esoteric and mystical aspects of it. There's a major transition going on. There's not only dark forces at work here. There's white light forces. There's things going on. There's an ET presence. We've never been alone, actually, and there's a lot going on. And there's been underground bases being built now and have been built over the last 50 years. Massive underground caverns that are fully self-supporting. And as well, there's also natural places that people live and lived off the land, and then there's underground villages. I was listening to a video today. They're saying that there's literally hundreds of these underground villages around the world where people literally lived underground, in tunnels, in caves, structures that they built in Turkey and India and in North America and South America. And some of them are incredibly sophisticated. People had a huge amount of effort to put into building something that they lived in underground. Why would they do that? Probably because the sun erupted. And that's kind of where we stand. Now, I want to encourage people to look into the solar activity on a daily basis and the shifting of the magnetic poles on the planet and the shifting of the magnetic field around the Earth is weakening. And I want people to look into shifting in the jet stream and the toxins that are on foods and so on, and start getting into that, because we're going through a major transition. But just like if you're prepared and you're conscious, just like going down a rapid water on a raft, if you steer properly and you know the terrain and everything, you can get through. It'll be rough, it'll be bouncy, but it'll get through it. So I encourage people very directly. I'm making a notice now. Today's May 6th. It'll go up tomorrow, May 7th. And start getting ready, because things I've been predicting for a really long time are starting to come. There's some food plants and food processing plants that have gone down and burned, and there's shipping problems and transportation problems and high cost problems and so on. But the good news is that we tend to live way over our needs. I mean, even I eat more food than I really need, and most of us do. And there's a whole lot of things that we could do in our life to simplify it a little bit and get through a transition, and also to help each other. Because if you look at the average house, I'm a realtor, I see some of these houses, they're just stuffed full of every kind of thing. They got enough food in there to last, a few months, and they probably don't even know that most of it that's there. They just don't even, they forgot about it. That's how people live these days in this country. So I want to get into some more of this inner aspects of this, because what's inside is outside. What's manifesting outside is the chaos that's within human beings. When we go inside, we get clear within ourselves, our outside life starts to get smoother and smoother and smoother. And there's a parallel between our individual life and the civilization. The civilization is, if it slowly starts to evolve toward more responsibility and more self-reliance and more food generation and more productivity on the individual level and more better relationships, if we start moving in that direction, it's just going to be a lot smoother transition, because we're going to go through a transition whether we like it or not. And some parts of this transition are extremely bad. I mean, in the negative, destructive sense. And if people doubt, well, where they live is very comfortable and the world isn't ending, well, in some parts of the world, consider Haiti and Afghanistan and so many other places around the world where they literally had whole cities destroyed within the last 20, 30, 40 years. It happens. And if we doubt that it happens, so prudence is a good thing. I've been talking about that for a long time. People tell me a little bit out there and stuff, but where I have made some choices in my life, it's fairly simple. I'm not going extreme. I'm not living in a cavern or a cave, and I don't have all the things that people think they need when they get, I'm 69 years old. I just live fairly simple and in a nice place. So worst case scenario, I could get by. Got water and food and a place to shelter. So again, watch my other videos. I am just a reporter. My name is Paul Smyers. I'm just a dot connector. And what I'm trying to do is introduce people to sources of information that I know and have talked to or read books on and listened to, so that you come to my site and I can point you in certain directions and give you some commentary and so on. And then I want people to go out and look on their own for some of these subjects. Look up underground bases. Look up what they're spraying in the atmosphere. Look up the loss of insect life and so on. So I don't want to make these videos too long, but I want to make sure that I help people understand that this is a really interesting time what we're going through. And there's an old story I remember, a little parable in short, that once upon a time there was this man, he's walking along, he's a blind man, and he's walking along, he falls in this well. And people are standing by and they're watching, what's the matter with that man? How come he fell in that well? And one guy says, well, because, the stupid man who built the well, go get him, it's his fault, he built the well. Another man said, no, the man who's blind, he shouldn't be walking around with his cane out there. What's the matter with him? And another person said, well, look, The man who watched him fall in the well is the one at fault because, like, he could see it was there. It's like, excuse me, don't go there. We have to be those people who say, look, okay, there's danger. You can avoid it. And you can mitigate it by prudent activity and prudent awareness and so on. And one of the things is take care of our body and everything and be healthy in our relationships. So I don't want to make these videos too long. Please watch other videos and like and share and subscribe if you want. I'm not a big channel right now, but I point in certain directions, and I've gotten a lot of feedback over the years because I've been on YouTube for probably about 15 years. So again, thanks for listening and appreciate all the feedback. I do respond, and I'd like to meet some people someday, but it's not very easy now. So again, I'll hope to see you in some of my other videos.